Welcome everyone back to Pommy and Oz. Hope we're all doing really well. It's Wednesday. It's a double header today. You've got the selection panel later this evening, 7 o'clock. That'll be a big one. But there's something a wee bit bigger at stake. It's Carlton versus Collingwood. So welcome back to the channel. If you're new around here, do me a solid. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe. Become a member. We've got a giveaway this weekend. So check that out. We'll have a little kickback stream. So you can become a member, but more importantly, make sure you hit the like and subscribe. That is totally free, and it helps us just validate that we're doing the right thing. But we're here now to preview a big, big game. The biggest game, the game that I look forward to every year. We get it twice this year, Collingwood versus Carlton, and this is a biter, this one. Collingwood, top of the ladder, absolutely flying. They've got the all-time record against us. They've got recent memories. It's 8-2 in the last 10 times we've played them. And we haven't beaten them in front of a crowd, really, because the last win came when we had that COVID year. And this is the test. This is the test. This is what the Blues have been building towards. And injuries aside, I don't count them because the injuries that we've got pretty much we're going to be going into in finals or they're going to be half-cooked anyway. So it's now or never. You've got to learn to beat these good sides. If we are going to play finals, which we are, going to have to find a way to negate it with the injury list we've got. Anyway, and let's talk about Collingwood. Collingwood, it has to be said, are the runaway best side in the comp at the moment. Ladders don't lie, genuinely. And let's look at their core makeup. 58.1% of the time they kick. Very similar to Carlton. 73% disposal efficiency. Again, very similar to Carlton. 54.3 inside 50s. Their rebound rate, very similar as well. High rebound rate. 16.1 metres gained per disposal. They are slightly more direct than Carlton, and we'll come on to that. 4.6 plus contested percentage differential, 0.4 clearance. 23.4% inside 50s become marked. 62.5 tackles, and 44.8% of their inside 50s will result in being a scoring opportunity. And how do you beat them? Well, I mean, let's discuss how they play. It's very interesting, I think, when you go through the core metrics of this game, that there is some similarities, but there's some big differences. And when you start delving into data and using your eye, you'll see where little things fall off. Now, there was a big talk about Carlton during their dark period this year, that the core stats to the face value didn't look so bad. Then when you delved into them, we always talk about the sister and brotherhood of numerical data, of how they are linked and tell a better story as opposed to one. And what you find Collingwood do incredibly well, and there's a lot being made of their fourth quarter, which in recent times isn't as astronomically as good as people think across the board. It's how they base their system. So their system is very, very team-based. Very similar to Carlton with one differential. Under pressure, they're looking to spread the play via kicks, where Carlton have started doing that in the early part of the season, and they've resorted now to going with taking contact, handballing, and running through the opposition. Both sides have incredible elite running numbers. Both are incredibly gut run based, and you see that from Nick Austin's recruitment. You see that over at Collingwood as well, that they've tried to recruit these elite runners. Collingwood had them there already predominantly. Carlton have had to bring that in because that's not been a core strength, and that kind of picture is myriaded in its handball efficiency, particularly over the last 5 rounds. Carlton are the number 1 handball efficient side in the league, which is incredible. And then when you take into the meters gained from that, they're actually more meters gained per handball, Carlton are, than Collingwood, which is a real interesting stat. And what does that tell you? Well, for a side that kicks when in trouble, which is what Collingwood do. And they have got one of the best kicking efficiencies compared with meters against. There's a few exceptions there. Eagles and North are in there because they're sideways kicking and trying to hold on. Collingwood are being very direct. Only Essendon are superior to them in distance and kicking efficiency. Means that is the method you beat them. You've got to take that pressure away and make them run and handball. And that is why players like Nick Dacos, players like Steele Sidebottom when he's been fit, Josh Dacos, they're having so much ability to damage. And people are saying, oh, no, uncontested possessions. It's because they find space. They're gut running ahead. So what Carlton have got to do is draw Collingwood, firstly, into that contested game. And that is very easy to say, very hard to execute. However, there is some hope for the Blues. The Eagles, the first 20 minutes of that game, for me, are the best Carlton have played all year. Now, take away the opposition because it's such a shit argument. If you are in the media or you're saying who Carlton beat, Carlton can't choose who they play, right? So they've got to find it. And it's the same as heavyweight boxing or if you watch combat sport, got to have tune-up fights to nail fighting the big guys. And Carlton have done that. And that first 15 minutes, they played a side that has a very similar makeup, albeit we're talking Audi versus Louis Vuitton, basically. It's like buying flip-flops from Louis Vuitton and then comparing them to Audi. They may look the same, but there's total difference in branding and quality. But they took away them kicking options. They took it away. They really pressured the kick and they forced the Eagles to try and either go backwards and retain possession, which is what Carlton did early doors when we were shit. And that invites more pressure forward of the ground. Carlton have got to look to do that because they are the number one stoppage, they're the number one clearance side, and they are the number one forward turnover side in the league in the last 6 games. And that's all post by. And that is what they've got to do. And that then plays into the weakness of Collingwood. Because Collingwood, in all fairness, they're building a bit of a mystique and an aura. And it's partly their skill, and it's also partly the media. And what I want to talk about is 2017 Richmond created this aura that if you weren't 20 goals in front in the fourth quarter, you were fucked. Now, Collingwood booked that trend in 2018 and they came out of the blocks fearsome. And that is what Carlton did with Port. They've got to make the opposition go up them gears earlier because we're going to show you a stat that shows you how Collingwood build their list and build their game. And everyone has a game strategy. And I always want you to think of it as golf. In golf, we always talk about 18 holes, right? And we talk about breaking that down into lots of 3. Very similar to AFL in the terms of that there's 4 quarters. You've got to try and split that up. And Carlton will be coming up against a side that starts strong, breaks in the middle, and then tries to have some energy levels in the fourth quarter. So Carlton's real operus mandi is quick, heavy pressure around the ball carrier, take off their preferred side of kick. So when you're approaching it, Fogarty's very good at this, has a good knowledge of where the halfbacks kick from. Are they left-footed or the right-footed? Make sure he's approaching from the angle, which takes away their strength, and then nailing that tackle. And Carlton taking away the short options, because that's what Collingwood do very strong. Quaynor and Nick Dacos are very clever at inviting the pressure, bob over the top, get it back, they're out the back. And that's where they do their best work. And that is what Carlton have got to look at doing. And they've done that incredibly well through the last 5 games. Really take that pressure off, because if you give these guys time on the ball, they're going to cut you apart. And they're also going to be able to control the game. And there's an element of almost duck, duck, goose with Collingwood's first quarter that they kind of let you burn a little bit of energy to get back into the game, knowing that they can contain it and have that with their elite running. And that is what Carlton have got to look at. They're equally as good running with or without the talent that's there. We expect a few players to come back. Obviously, Walsh is a big loss in that elite running, but it's making the pressure, creating repeat stoppages, and backing your one wood, because that is what you've got to do. If they've got time to kick, they will kick you to pieces. pretty much. Carlton want a handball game. They want it in tight, they want it in close, and they want to create this a very contested game. And this is a real myriad of styles because early doors, Voss kind of really wanted that uncontested football, right? Which is what Collingwood are really strong at. And I'll never criticise that because it's logical. Get the ball into space. Carlton have really gone back to their ethos. That contested football is their brand. And that is what they're superior at than Collingwood. And as you can see, Collingwood's numbers, when we bring Carlton's up, not a world of difference. And here we are. Let's look at the mighty Behemoths that are the Blues. And you can see kick percentage is shooting down. That was up at 60, right, when we started doing these videos. That has come down astronomically. That's quite hard to do as well. Disposal efficiency, again, that's starting to become more normalized now, right? Because obviously a lot of sideways kicks. Then meters per gained, that was at 15.1 a couple of weeks ago. Starting to shoot up. Carlton are really starting to utilize that handball. Like we said, the number one handball side efficiency with meters gained in the comp at our Carlton Football Club. Inside 50 is starting to go up. The rebound rate, this is where it is really, really strong. Really, really strong. That Carlton are transitioning. And that is why there's been such a more focus on Carlton's run and carry out of the back half of the ground. They're starting to attack teams when they're at their most vulnerable, which is when they're attacking. Now, for a side like Collingwood that really relies on it's pretty impressive goal accuracy, it has to be said, especially late in the game. Their goal accuracy is good, but they are the number one goal accuracy side in the comp. Incidentally as well, that is where they go. That's where you can hurt them. That is where you can hurt them. They don't have a plethora of inside 50s. They're only 6th in inside 50s generated per game. But they do go there and they look for repeat entries. And that is where Carlton have been really good. They've stopped repeat entries and they're also looking to counter punch. And that is going to be really interesting because Collingwood play a really deep forward press. And Carlton destroyed Port Adelaide when they did that. And they've only played one side that plays that deep forward press. And what they did really well is see what we said about Nick Dacos and Quaynor. They look for that short option. They look to run on. But with a little bit of a difference, Carlton have been trying to do this by fabricating it, not with ball possession. They've deployed Kemp and McGovern in more of them central roles, particularly Kemp in the last couple of weeks, and he's looked to bring it down, right? He hasn't gone for the mark. He's looked to bring it down and not take possession of the ball, get them when they're most vulnerable. And what that does is if you think when the ball is in motion, in the air, players are jostling to be there at the fall of the ball. Or waiting for possession to be retained and then put pressure on the ball carrier. So there is a mind in taking that possession and picking up your short hit-up targets. Carlton have found a way of negating that by bringing it to ground very quickly and playing on while the ball is in motion, while teams are starting to have that 50-50 decision of, do I prepare for the mark or do I prepare for the next passage of play? And Carlton have been really good at switching that up and creating really an unrhythmical sense because forward pressure, you notice it in games just with your eye without looking at data. Teams get in a rhythm, right? And teams get stuck under pressure doing the same thing. Carlton hitting it down the wing all the time in the early doors. When you start to break up that rhythm, it's really hard. And that's something that Port struggled with. And we saw Dan Houston being moved around a lot. He was moved around like a just oil protester. Right? Do you know what I mean? 1 minute he's there, 1 minute he's there. And that was because of Carlton's real incoherent almost rebound 50 methods. They didn't quite know how to negate that. So that is a real important passage of play here. We talked about contested possession. Carlton dominant at it. +8, +9. They're ridiculous metrics. That is, yeah, we're talking pretty strong, to be fair. We're talking that Carlton are looking to really, really hurt sides in that avenue. Also, the clearances, as we know, a real big one would have Carlton. Real strong clearance differential, especially from where that's come from because they forgot about that early part of the season with a stronger side, it has to be said. Real strong mark inside 50 rate, and that is slightly going up as well, it has to be said. But also, Carlton's goal assists and score involvements are starting to be evenly spread, which we haven't seen for a long time. You'd have to go back to like 2013 when Carlton started to have spreads like they do now. The tackles have been impressive, and this is something that you want to look at when you're playing weaker opposition. Carlton have actually incidentally given up the ball to some of these teams, and they've really applied themselves. And the chance creation, again, shows you a big part of the problem. We talked about this early doors, that Carlton are getting a lot of shots on goal, but the problem is that they're from low percentile places. Now Carlton are starting to still get them inside 50s, but they're generating them deeper and harder. And against a side that looks to spread quickly from the back half of the ground, this is something that Carlton have got to look at negating very quickly and get that deeper. If you start doing shallow entries against these Muppets, you're in a world of hurt. So Carlton have got to look for that extra kick, which is what they've been doing. Martin's suspected to come back. Connor's there. Real important that we get them deep entries and we get Kerno working in them spaces. And that is a big advantage for Carlton, because I do actually feel with Kerno working in a smaller forward line, he's got a lot of place to move. And Harry and Charlie, when we played them in round 10, did have that issue of staying in the same area, which is a disaster for someone like Darcy Moore, because he knows where that hot zone is. And Carlton have looked to do it. Now, let's look at the makeup. We talked about how they metronome the game, how they pace it. Very similar starts. Carlton have come out of the blocks hot, which is a huge improvement. They've started to bring that intensity, and that is what Collingwood have done really well all year. They set the standard. They literally let the opposition know, you're in for a fucking game today, gentlemen. Right? Carlton have got to come out there hot. Right? Now, this is important. Carlton haven't lost a second quarter during this period of resurgence, the last 5 games. And it's a really good place to start looking, because regardless of the opposition, you can start to see models, and teams do seem to go through blocks of 5 where they're working on things. And even Collingwood have had little strings to their bow in their 5 games, even though they have been very good. What Carlton have got to do here is, this is a real key bit here, because what Collingwood have done is, even though they've won so many, they have tried to keep a set-minded number that they're happy to chase, almost like cricket, happy to chase or happy to protect. Now, the third quarter is where both sides slightly go down. Carlton have drawn one. That's what 0.5 is, for those asking. And they kind of conserve a bit of energy, right, in this third. And both have won, incidentally, 3 out of 5 of their 4th quarters. And this is going to be really telling here, because Carlton want to get out early. In an ideal world, Carlton get 20 ahead, and then they par the second, and then they par the third, and leave enough in the tank, go goal for 2 quarters, and then match them in the 4th. I think that will be probably the dream, but Carlton want to try and get the jump. We talked about Collingwood were the first to really break that aura of Richmond, which went on for a year and a bit, people forget. You've got to come out of the blocks hot, and you've got to be saying to Collingwood in the second quarter, burn your energy. Burn your energy in the second and third, particularly after half-time. Burn your energy, because they're comfortable with a 4-goal play. That's what Carlton have got to look at. They've got to make sure that they negate the game. Now, the real strength of the Blues is this contested brand hasn't done anything to running numbers at all. So that is a real strong little avenue there where Carlton will definitely be resting their hat on. We can get through that third, and we can make them burn energy. We've got enough in the tank to make this a contested game in the 4th, because the uncontested numbers in the 4th are insane by Collingwood as teams tire. Port Adelaide, they smithereen them with these short 1-2s, these give and goes. That's what Carlton have got to do. They need energy burning in that third. They want to make it a scrap in the third, and then they have got more than half a chance. Then we come to it. Let's look at the matchups. Now, Carlton's defence versus their forwards, the only thing that's tipping them over the edge is they've got such a multitude of scorers and their high efficiency. You've got number ones, basically the number 1 forward line versus the number 1 defence, and it's really negligible on the algorithm. It's really tight. And I've had to give it to Collingwood, but it is so tight. And it's one of them things that will definitely be on the personnel of the forward line. It's going to be an interesting one, right? The midfield, though, Carlton are clear winners of this. And I don't think there'll be many Pies fans that could argue that. You'll probably get the occasional Dafty in there. But from core crooks of midfield ball and winning the hard stuff, Carlton do have the advantage there. Forward versus defence. Obviously, Harry would tip this over the edge, but their defence and their ability to counter-punch from the back line has been as equally as impressive in recent times as the Blues has been. And this is a big strong because they're a strong defensive unit, but they're also a strong counter-punch unit. And the only real clear winner in this is clearance and stoppage. Carlton are dominant from that. And that is no exception. Unfortunately, the algorithm is saying Collingwood are stronger, right? And even with that change, and that is also because they were so bad early doors. But is this a game that Carlton can win? Of course it is. Of course it is. And it's all going to come down to the application, right? And the big thing is Collingwood have obviously ironed this game plan. For Carlton, this is a return to the game plan. This is a return to normality. But there should be no fear here because for the first time in a long time, there is zero pressure on the Blues, right? No one expects us to win. And that is a great place to be because suddenly this is round 23 last year again. Carlton win, they are in the 8. Mathematically and all the algorithms, they get the 4 points here, son away. Because St Kilda are sliding, Essendon are sliding. They won't be in the 8 come the end of the year. GWS, they've got some tough games to go. They're making hay while the sun shines, but they will be found out. That is where Carlton suddenly become pole position. They're Seb Vettel. They're at the top of the ladder. They're fine. And this is a big game here. And really the core fundamentals for Carlton, right, for the first time in a long time, is go out there and play your way. And you play your natural bowl game. And it's going to be a great matchup. This is a fantastic game. I am so excited for this game because this is two sides playing some really, really good football and some really strong football that really complements and hurts each other at the same time. Carlton will be looking at the Port Adelaide game as a great model because Collingwood love that direct style and love to hit you over the overlap. And Carlton negated that. This is another step up in class from Port. And it's going to be a really, really solid game. I'm expecting a big crowd. I'm expecting a big furnace. And I can't wait for this one. But my prediction is the Carlton Blues win this one by 12. Fuck TPI for a minute. But can't wait for it. Good luck to both teams. Go the mighty Bluebaggers. I will be cheering them hard, as I know you all do. Look after yourselves. Much love. I'm out.
I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots and a sexy body full of tats. Baby's bad, oh baby's hella